Hello, welcome to my channel. So we are continuing with the nervous system, but specifically today we are going to concentrate on the peripheral nervous system. Of course, where we are going to discuss the cranial and the spinal nerves. Okay. So this was our recap from our previous lecture on the central nervous system, where we talked about the classification of the nervous system. We have the central and the peripheral. So we did the central last time. We discussed the brain, the spinal cord, went to the brain, the forebrain, midbrain, and all these structures. Okay. Then now we're going to talk about the autonomic and the somatic. Autonomic, then we'll also discuss some on the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, but specifically today we're going to concentrate more on the cranial and the spinal nerves. Okay. So the peripheral nervous system, PNS, includes all nervous tissue outside the central nervous system. So components of the peripheral nervous system include the cranial nerves and their branches, spinal nerves and their branches, of ganglia and sensory receptors. So the PNS may be subdivided further into a somatic nervous system. Also we have a somat body. So if you want to break down the words, so from the somatic, the somat means body, then you have autonomic nervous system. So auto is self, the nomic is law. Okay, so that's the breakdown of the words. And you also have the enteric nervous system, and remember, an enter is for, or enteric is actually for the intestines. So these are some of the subdivisions of PNS. Okay, so this is to specify today what we are going to discuss, the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So the peripheral nervous system has sensory receptors, motor endings, cranial nerves, and the four plexuses of the extremities. Okay, so we are going to now just discuss them in details. Okay, so that's about the peripheral. So in terms of the spinal nerves, okay, so the peripheral nervous system consists of 31 pairs of spinal nerves and 12 pairs of cranial nerves. So there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves that leaves the vertebral canal, which is formed by 33 vertebrae. Then by passing through the intervertebral foramina, they are named and grouped according to the vertebra with which they are associated with. So meaning if those ones passing on the cervical vertebrae, they are known as the cervical spinal nerves. So the cervical spinal nerves are 8. So we have 8 cervical. Then you have 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. Okay. So those are that's for the spinal nerves. Then for the cranial nerves, there are 12 pairs. So the first cranial nerve is olfactory nerve, second optic nerve, third oculomotor, fourth trochlea, then seventh the trigeminal nerve, then abducens nerve, that's the abducens nerve, the seventh, then the facial nerve, then you have the vestibulocochlear nerve, the glossopharyngeal, you have the vagus nerve, and you have the accessory nerve, and you have the hypoglossal nerve. And usually when I'm teaching, I like it's to those if there are some students who have difficulties mastering they have some difficulties mastering the the cranial nerves, so I usually put a song for them. Okay, so and that song is actually has also helped me to just know the cranial nerves. Okay, so I think I can play the song to you, but at least you also get to know the song for the cranial nerves. Okay. Opticochromotor.
Tribunal after sense, facial, auditory, glossopharyngeal, vagus, accessory hypoglossal, vagus, accessory hypoglossal. The auditory is also called vestibulocochlear.
Okay, so that's the song. I'm also just going to play it again so that at least you now get it for the second time.
Olfactory, optical, glomoto, trochlear, trigeminal, after sense, facial, auditory, gustopharyngeal, vagus, accessory hypoglossal, vagus, accessory hypoglossal. The auditory is also called vestibulocochlear.
Okay, so that's the song, and it has really helped me, and I hope you're also going to use it, if especially if maybe you have difficulties. And of course, there are some mnemonics for the same or for the same cardio as in how to remember. Yeah, how to remember the same cardio. So you can actually also just check up the mnemonics. I failed to come up with one because I wasn't comfortable with them. I was more comfortable with the song, really. Okay, so I think we can move. Let's move. Okay, so these are the canonies we are talking about. Okay, so how are they classified? So classification of the canonies. So number one, we have sensory canonies which contain only afferent or sensory fibers. Now these are we have the olfactory nerve, optic nerve, and the vestibulocochlear nerve. Okay, then you have the motor cranial nerves, which contain only the efferent or the motor fibers. These are the oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, abducent nerve, accessory nerve, and hypoglossal nerve. Then we have the mixed nerves, which contain both sensory and motor fibers. So you have the trigeminal nerve, the facial nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, and you have the vagus nerve. And remember, the vestibulocochlear is also known as the auditory nerve. Okay, so these are the classification of the cranial. So now we're going to look at the cranial nerves one by one in details. We just talk about them in details. Okay, so we discuss the stem 12 pairs, and you have to know that two attached to the forebrain, to the tail, and the diencephalon. So means the telencephalon and the diencephalon. Then the other 10 attached to the brainstem of the mesh, the mate, and the myeloencephalon. Then you're also going to discuss the names that relate to the appearance or function, also where their classification, their origin, and destination. So for C is classification, or origin, D destination. So number one cranial nerve we're going to start with is the olfactory nerve. So this one, in terms of classification, is a sensory nerve. Then origins and it comes from the olfactory epithelium in the nasal cavity. Destination in the olfactory bulbs by way of cribriform plate of ethmoid. Then on cranial nerve directly attached to the cerebrum. This is the only one. Okay. So the same olfactory nerve, these are the nerves of the sense of smell. Their nerve endings and fibers originate in the upper part of the mucous membrane of the nasal cavity, and they pass upwards through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone and then go to the olfactory bulb. Then the nerves then proceed backwards as the olfactory tract to the area for the perception of smell in the temporal lobe of the cerebrum. Okay, so we are done uh, with the explanation. So this is actually the olfactory epithelium, or the epithelium inside the nasal cavity, and they take the olfactory bulb, then the olfactory tract. So this is also another picture just showing you the same picture, the same cranial nerve number one, which is the olfactory nerve. Okay, so from the nasal cavity, remember. Okay, so cranial nerve number two, this is the optic nerve. Classification is a sensory nerve. Then its origin from the retina. Then destination by way of the optic foramina of sphenoid to the diencephalon or the optic chiasma and to the occipital lobe nerve. So the cranial nerve number two, of course, we know that's a sensory nerve. So these are the nerves of the sense of sight. Then the fibers originate in the retina of the eyes and they combine to form the optic nerves. Then they then pass through the optic foramina of the sphenoid bone into the cranial cavity and join at the optic chiasma. Then the nerves proceed backwards as the optic tracks to the lateral geniculate bodies of the thalamus. Then impulses pass through these to the center for sight in the occipital lobes of the cerebrum to the cerebellum. Then in the occipital lobe site is perceived and so in the occipital lobe sight is perceived and in the cerebellum the impulses from the eyes contribute to the maintenance of balance, posture and orientation of the head in space. The optic nerve originating from the retina, then this is where the optic chiasma is. Okay, where now they interchange. The nerves from the right goes to the left, then from the right goes to the from the left to the right, right to the left. So this is the optic nerve, the eyeball, and from the retina, then they are going to originate the spinal optic nerve, then they go to the chiasma. Okay. So kind of number 3, its classification is a motor neuron. It's a motor nerve. Then origin is from the mesencephalon. Destination somatic motor to superior, inferior, medial recti, and inferior oblique. We have the visceral motor to intrinsic eye muscles by way of the superior orbital fissure. So this is the oculomotor. So in terms of functions of the oculomotor, then you know that it's the one which actually raises the upper eyelid. It also turns the eyeball upwards, downwards, and medially. Then it also constricts the pupil. Origins anterior surface of the midbrain, then opening to the skull is through the superior orbital fissure. So that's about the oculomotor nerve. Then you also have to know that the oculomotor nerves arise from the nerve fibers, from the nerve cells near the cerebral aqueduct. Then they supply 4 extraocular muscles from which moves the eyeball. That is of the superior, medial, inferior recti and the inferior oblique muscle. Then you also have intraocular muscles such as the ciliary muscle, which alter the shape of the lens, changing its refractive power. Then you have the circular muscles of the iris, which constricts the pupil. Then you also have the levator palpebral muscle, which raises the upper eyelid. Okay, so this is what they actually supply. And this is how they are specifically. Okay, so we have the superior recti and this is the oculomotor supplying the superior recti, supplying the medial recti, the ciliary ganglia. Then you also have the inferior rectus muscle and you have the rectus lateral rectus muscle. So these are the muscles they supply both the intraocular and the extraocular muscles. Okay, so that's what the pictures are showing. Let's go to the 4th nerve, which is the trochlea. So classification is a motor neuron, motor nerve, and its origin is from the mesencephalon, then destination to the superior oblique muscle by way of the superior orbital. So this is the oculo. This is the oculomotor is above. Then you have the trochlea nerve now, which is below E. Okay. In the trochlea nerve, of course, you know that it's a motor nerve, and its function is assisting in turning eyeball downward and laterally. That's the function. So turning the eyeball downward and laterally. The origin is from the posterior surface of the midbrain, and its opening to the skull is through the superior orbital fissure. Okay, so the trochlear nerve, these nerves arise from the nerve cells near the cerebral aqueduct, and they supply the superior oblique muscles of the eyes. is the superior oblique muscle of the eye, and it's being supplied by the trochlear nerve. Okay. Let's go to the fifth. This is trigeminal. So this one is classification is actually a mixed one. There are three major branches of the ophthalmic, which is a sensory, of the maxillary, which is a sensory, then you have mandibular, which is a mixed one. And its origin from the face, and the nuclei of pons. Then the destination is the sensory nuclei in pons, muscles in pons. Then the other destination is muscles of mastication. Okay, so the trigeminal nerve is of course a mixed nerve, and these same nerves contain motor and sensory fibers. So that's what we mean by mixed. So meaning they contain both motor and sensory fibers, and are among the largest of the cranial nerves. They are the chief sensory nerves for the face and head, including the oral and nasal cavities and teeth, receiving impulses of pain, temperature, and touch. Then the motor fibers stimulate the muscles of mastication. Then there are three main branches of the trigeminal nerves. You have the ophthalmic nerve, the maxillary nerve, and the mandibular nerve. These are the zones or the divisions. So you have the ophthalmic zone, you have the maxillary zone, then you have the mandibular zone of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, so that's the trigeminal nerve and its divisions. So them now in details. So let's start with the ophthalmic nerves. So these ophthalmic nerves are sensory only. They supply the lacrimal glands, conjunctiva of the eyes, forehead, eyelids, anterior aspect of the scalp, and mucous membrane of the nose. So the way just why I remember ophthalmic, remember ophthalmic for optic, so meaning at least up where the eyes are located, so meaning the lacrimal gland are located near the eyes, conjunctiva of the eyes, then forehead, so against near the eyes, eyelids. So we are talking about the upper aspect from the nose going up. Okay. Then you have the maxillary nerves. So these ones are sensory only, and they supply the cheeks, the upper gums, upper teeth, and lower eyelids. So this one is easy to know where the location goes of the maxilla. The maxilla. Then um, you have the lastly you have the mandibular. So the mandibular nerve, this one contain both sensory and motor fiber. So this one is a mixed one, and they supply the teeth and gums of the lower jaw, the pinna of the ears, lower lip, and tongue. So mandibular is on the lower part, so the mandible is on the lower part, whilst the maxilla is on the upper part. So that's the thing to remember about the location and where they supply. Okay. Then the motor fibers of the mandibular nerves supply the muscles of mastication. Okay, so this is the ophthalmic nerve. How the ophthalmic nerves has its own many branches that's supplying from the eyelids, the conjunctiva. That's how it's supplied. The maxillar nerve, okay, that's the maxillar nerve where it's applied and its branches. This is the mandible bone and the mandibular nerve and its branches and where they supply. Okay, let's do kind of number 6, which is the abducens nerve, whose classification is this one is just a motor alone, origin from the pons, then destination to the lateral recti eye muscles. So this is the abducens one, abducens nerve. Okay, so the abducens nerves, these nerves arise from a group of nerve cells lying under the floor of the fourth ventricle. They supply the lateral rectus muscle of the eyeballs. Then the function of the abducens nerves is the lateral rectus muscle turn the eyeball laterally. Okay, so that's the function. The origin is from the medulla oblongata. Then opening the skull is through the spinal orbital. This is the abducens nerve, supplying the lateral rectus muscle, which turns the eyeball laterally. And of course, it has to pass through the superior orbital fissure for it to now to go into the brain. Okay, then we have the facial nerve number 7. So the facial nerve is a mixed one. Its origin, the sensor is from the taste receptors of the anterior two-thirds of the tongue or motor. Then the motor one is from the pons. So the sensory from the tongue, the motor from the pons. Then destination, the sensory to sensory nuclei of the pons, whilst the motor muscles of the facial expression, visceral motor to the tear gland. That's the destination. So these facial nerves are composed of both the motor and the sensory nerves. That's why we call them mixed. Then the motor fibers supply the muscles of the facial expression. Then the sensory fibers convey impulses from the taste buds in the anterior two-thirds of the tongue to the taste receptors, to the taste perception area in the cerebral cortex, the facial nerve and its branches. Okay. So these are the branches of the facial nerve. So there's zygomatic branch, the buccal branch, mandibular branch. So those are some of the things you have to know. And this is showing you what we call Bell's palsy, where now there is where the facial nerve is affected and is not able to do facial expressions on one side of the face. As you can see, this side there is a drooping of the on the lateral side of the mouth, then also on the eyelids as well. Okay, that's the facial nerve. Then 8, we have the vestibulocochlear. Then classification for this one is the sensory nerve. Then origin from receptors of the inner ear. Then destination nuclei in the pons and medulla oblongata. This one is also known as the acoustic nerve. Then or auditory nerve. So vestibulocochlear, acoustic or auditory nerve. Yeah, that's the other name. Okay, so that's the auditory in the ear to the medulla from the medulla oblongata to the ear to the inner ear. So the vestibulocochlear nerves or the auditory nerves, these ones are composed of two distinct sets of fibers. You have the vestibular nerves and the cochlear nerve. So that's why I call them vestibulocochlear. So on the vestibular nerves, the vestibular nerves arise from the semicircular canals of the inner ear and convey impulses to the cerebellum. They are associated with the maintenance of posture and balance. Then we also have the cochlear nerves. So the cochlear nerves originate in the organ of corti in the inner ear. It conveys impulses to the hearing areas in the cerebral cortex where sound is perceived. So these are the vestibular ganglia, then this is the cochlear ganglia. Okay. Then you have the glossopharyngeal nerve. So this one is a mixed nerve. Origin from the sensory part is from the posterior one-third of the tongue, whilst the motor part is from the medulla oblongata. Then destination, there is destination to the medulla and also the other one destination to the muscles for swallowing and the parotid gland. So the glossopharyngeal nerves arise from nuclei in the medulla oblongata. Then the motor, since we said it's a mix, so the motor fibers stimulate the muscles in the tongue and pharynx and the secretory cells of the parotid salivary glands. Then you also have the sensory fiber which convey impulses to the cerebral cortex from the posterior third of the tongue. The tonsils and the pharynx and from taste buds in the tongue and the pharynx. So that's the sensory part. So these nerves are essential for the. So this is the glossopharyngeal nerve from the lateral one side to the tongue and also to the pharynx as well. Okay. Then you have the vagus nerve. So this one is a mix, and its origin is sensation from the pharyngeal area and outer ear. Then the motor is from the medulla. Then destination, the sensory to the medulla. Then the motor one, we have the visceral autonomic motor to the thoracic and abdominal cavities and their organs. And then also have major motor pathways for this is where we have the major pathways for autonomic nervous system. Then this is the most important cranial. So this is what it supplies. All of these. That's the vagus nerve. That's what it's. So the vagus nerve, of course, the mixed one. It has a more extensive distribution than any other cranial nerves. They arise from nerve cells in the medulla oblongata and other nuclei and pass down through the neck into the thoracic and the abdomen. Then these nerves form an important part of the parasympathetic nervous system. Then the motor fibers supply the smooth muscles and secretory glands of the pharynx, larynx, trachea, heart, esophagus, stomach, intestines, pancreas, the gallbladder, bile ducts, the spleen, the kidneys, the ureter, and blood vessels in the thoracic and abdominal cavities. Then the sensory fibers convey impulses from the lining membranes of the same structures to the brain. So the same structures now impulses now to the brain. Okay, so that's the vagus nerve. This is all its supply. Liver, the stomach, the intestines, the spleen, the kidneys. We have already mentioned all these. Okay, then let's go to the kind of number 11th. We have the which is the accessory nerve, also known as the spinal accessory nerve. Then classification, this one is the motor nerve, then origin from the motor nuclei of the medulla and the spinal cord. Then destination for swallowing and also to swallowing trapezius and the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Then you have the hypoglossal nerve, which is the cranial nerve number 12. This one is the motor nerve and its origin from the motor nuclei of the medulla, destination on the tongue musculi. So this is the kind of number 11, the hypoglossal kind of number 12 here, then the 11th one is here. Okay. So now let's look at the kind nerves in details, both of them, one by one. So the accessory nerves, of course, these ones are motor. They arise from the cell bodies in the medulla oblongata and in the spinal cord. Then the fibers supply the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscles. Then the branches join the vagus nerve and supply the pharyngeal and the laryngeal. So that's the spinal nerve. And then also let's go to the hypoglossal now. So the hypoglossal nerve, these nerves arise from cells in the medulla oblongata and they supply the muscles of the tongue and muscles surrounding the hyoid bone and contribute to swallowing and so that's the hypoglossal nerve. Then we introduced the spinal nerves where we talked about the pairs of the spinal nerves and whatnot. So the spinal nerves are sensory and motor. They run through the intervertebral foramen and they also affect they affect the dermatomes. So those are the spinal nerves. Then, but the spinal nerves, we won't go into details because there are a lot. So since there are 8 cervical, they follow the cervical the vertebral column, and that's how they are also numbered. Okay. Then we have the four principal plexuses, which is a blend or a network of nerve fibers from several spinal roots. So we have cervical plexus, which has its own branches such as the phrenic nerve, the brachial plexus, the lumbar plexus, the sacral plexus. So, but the most important one you have to know how to draw is the brachial plexus. At least that one usually comes in the exams. But uh, but for here, we are going to show you some of the plexuses, but we won't necessarily draw. So this is the cervical plexus, and you have the phrenic nerve which innervates the diaphragm. Okay, so this is where the phrenic nerve is. So this is the cervical plexus, then the nerve root of the cervical plexus for the spinal nerve. Then you have the brachial plexus. So the brachial plexus begins from C5, C6, C7, C8, and C, and adding T1 as well. Okay, so those are the plexuses, the brachial plexus, and depending on the program that you are doing, it depends. For instance, if those clinical officers find that maybe it's very unlikely to be asked about the brachial plexus, and in, as in that to draw, then for other categories such as those doing degrees, degree in clinical medicine, and even just those who are attending human biology, of course, definitely they just have to know this, okay, in anatomy. Okay, but for this one, it's just to introduce where we talk about the brachial plexus and how it looks and the nerves it has. Then we move on. Okay, so let's make progress. And you also have nerves of the arm, such as the muscutaneous, musculocutaneous nerve, median nerve, the ulnar nerve, and the radial nerve. So the radial nerve innervates the forearm extensors. The ulnar nerve innervates the media flexors. Then the median nerve innervates the lateral flexors. Then the musculocutaneous nerve innervates the biceps and brachialis. Then you have the lumbar plexus. The lumbar plexus has the femoral nerve, the lumbosacral trunk, the sciatic nerve, and you also have the pituitary nerve. So this is the lumbar plexus of the spinal nerves. Okay. Then from the lumbar plexus, we have the sacral plexus. This is the sacral plexus. Okay, so we have the sciatic nerve here. Okay. Then you have the pudendal nerve, we have the posterior femoral cutaneous nerve. Okay. Then you also have nerves of the legs. So nerves of the legs, the sciatic nerve, which is the thickest and longest. You also have branches to the tibia and fibula nerves. You have the femoral nerve posterior on the posterior aspect of the leg. So this is these are the nerves of the leg. Okay. So this is just a narrow lumbar disc space out in pressure on the spinal roots. So where now someone develops a narrow lumbar disc space. Okay. Then this is showing the white oval, which is a post-surgical cyst or abscess. So this the white portion here. Then you also have shingles of which is herpes zoster, where the varicella zoster virus of the herpes family affects the cranial nerves in the dorsal root ganglia and the cranial nerves. Then initial infection is usually from the chicken pox, and the chicken pox, then the reinfection again, then it might cause someone to have shingles, and it might affect the cranial nerves. Okay, it might affect the trigeminal, the facial. Okay, that's especially the trigeminal. Okay, so that's the end of the of today's lecture, and this is the checkpoint. So the know the cranial nerves and their functions, because I usually also like asking about cranial nerves and their functions. So know at least what they do and their numbers in correct order. Remember the number, we don't just write the cranial nerves using the numbers, the normal numbers. We use the Roman numerals, and the CN is supposed to be there. That's the code. Okay, so they are coded. The numbers represent how they are positioned in the brain from anterior to posterior. So that's very important. And then the names again might suggest the structure that they are, the structure that they innervate, then sometimes even the function that they do. So those are some of the things you definitely have to know about the cranials. You have to know them. Okay. So otherwise, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and the bell notification. And see you on the next tutorial, which is on the these are doing peripherals. So the next one will be the autonomic nervous system. All right.